Hey, what's up, guys? This is Eric Barstow with Painting Business Pro, and I've got Greg Miller here from Green Pro Painting, and also my partner on some commercial training. So this video, we're going to do two parts. The first part is going to be about the Painting Business Pro commercial blueprint reading and estimating course, which is really Greg's expertise. So we're going to talk to you about how do you bid from blueprints, particularly when you're working with GCs. So we're going to start with that, let you know about the program we have to train you on that, because obviously that's a lot more than a 45-minute training on how to bid from blueprints. So we're going to introduce that program, and then we're going to shift to part two, where we're going to be talking about just working with general contractors in general. That's really Greg's specialty. He's been working with GCs for his whole business. That's his specialty, is working with general contractors. He has no marketing spend, and his business is just growing and growing. So he's really an expert, and he's done a lot of coaching and training with contractors. So let's dive right in. I'll start by just a little introduction for Greg, and then he'll introduce himself, and then we'll just dive into the program and show you guys what's all included there. And then we'll shift into part two. As we go through this live stream, if you have questions, drop them in the comments, and we'll be sure to address all of them in the second part of the video. So a year ago, which a little over a year ago, it was 2020, I decided I'm going to start building my commercial painting business model. And, I started digging around, talking to a lot of people, and realized I needed to hire some people or work with some consultants or coaches who really were masters of commercial painting. And, Scott Lawler, someone I decided to work with, and then other people were referring Greg. So one of the big questions people obviously have with doing commercial work is, how do I bid it? Right. And there's a lot of commercial work out there, anything that's done with general contractors, and maybe even some other types of work, but I think it's all GC. So you'll clarify that for us, Greg. But a lot of commercial work, you need to be able to bid from blueprints, and you need to understand how to read scopes of work and a whole bunch of stuff I'm not the expert on. And so that's why we brought in Greg. So Greg came highly recommended. He's been training painting contractors to bid from blueprints for years now. He's personally trained well over 100 painting contractors to bid from blueprints before we even did our commercial training program, where we've got over 100 more people that he's trained. And then obviously he runs his own company, working primarily with GCs, and he'll say a little bit more about it. But he's been doing this for a long time. So was happy to work with him to bring in this program, which we'll get into in a minute. So Greg, you want to just share a little bit about your background and how you got into GC work, and then how you also got into like training painting contractors to bid from prints.
Absolutely. Yeah. So welcome everybody. Thanks for stopping in. And thanks for having me again, Eric. Love to be a part of this group. So a little background on me. I've been in the painting industry for pretty much my whole life, family business. When I was in college, I was studying to be an architect or construction manager. So I had a lot of background in blueprint reading, went on to work for an entrepreneur, painting contractor, much like Eric and myself. It was not just like a mom and pop, chucking a truck, as we call it, jokingly. And he really inspired me to help him grow his business. So I started to press him for doing commercial work. And we had some opportunities through our residential side of the business through a builder. And he started giving us blueprints. So originally what I was doing was reading them with rulers and staying late after work and after school, bidding these jobs, and built out some production numbers with my old boss. And he actually introduced me to the PDCA, or PCA now.
Yeah.
So I was able to really develop those numbers well. So we went on to do some really large projects. I was in New York. I was young, and learned a lot about the business in that area. Then I moved, fast forward a few years, I moved to South Carolina and started up Green Pro, and kind of got a little crazy with the residential repaint. It got out of hand really fast for me. I hit 650,000 in my third year, and I was pulling my hair out. I was hiring people left and right, not quality, just throwing people out there. They were making a lot of mistakes, and it kind of made me want to dive back into the commercial realm because I had experience in that. Now, the barrier of entry for it was a little bit different, so it's easier to do with an established business. So anyways, jump back into it, kind of head first and built out these production numbers again. And here we are today. And basically, in my experience, I had some business coaching in the past, and I was in a large group of people, large group of painting contractors, and I realized that there was a need for training for estimators. They were constantly asking questions about our bidding process and how it was working for us, and I realized that there was a deficit. So I went on to form a company where I did third-party estimating services for painting contractors. I had some architects and draftsmen working for me. But what ended up happening is that we ended up training their estimators. So over time, they just basically reverse engineered our process and working with us, and we would have retainers, and then it would like slowly taper off. So it was like we would build the business up, and then it would like dip, and it was hard to keep the numbers consistent. And at the end of the day, I want to see this whole entire industry grow professionally. I want it to be more respected, and I want to, kind of put my shovel in the ground for that. So that's why I like doing it, and that's why
Greg and I, found a mutual fit working together. Was not just, oh, you know how to bid blueprints and you want to teach it. Cool. There was definitely, aligned with values and what we're committed to, providing to contractors in this industry. So we will talk later about hiring a third party or like a freelancer to do your commercial bids for you. And we'll also talk about maybe some of the challenges and concerns with doing that as well. So that'll be in part 2, because, we'll get to that in part 2. So I think the punchline here is, so Greg's running his business, doing all this blueprint reading, realized other people needed it, started doing bids for other people. And over time that just morphed into, I'm training everybody's estimators. And then you started actually teaching like an 8-week program, right? Live with people. And how long did you do that for? That was for a couple of years, wasn't it?
It was about 2 years I was doing that. Yeah. So we designed basically like a course load and a curriculum for it. And that's actually, it's evolved into something better over time. And that's what we're going to pitch here for you today.
All right, great. So let's just look here. So this is what we put together. So basically, Greg, we'll go to the homepage here. So Greg had already built this program when him and I connected. He'd already been doing this. Obviously, he was doing this on one-offs, training people one-on-one for a long time, and teaching estimators. Then he built it into a program, and he did that several times, made it a little better every time. So by the time we connected, he really already had this model, this whole training program built. So you go to the Painting Business Pro site and you just log into the members area, and then this is what it looks like. So there's a lot of stuff in this members area that we're not talking about today, but if we just look at this blueprint reading and estimating training program, it's this module right here. So you see we've got module 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So we're just going to go through each of these and give you kind of a 1 to 2 minute overview on each of these videos and what Greg and his head estimator train in each of these modules. So this first one is Introduction and Bid Manager Overview. That's a 40-minute training. And then we've got Bid Invite Overview, which is a 30-minute training. And then there's a follow-up Q&A for about 15 minutes. So we did deliver this course live with a group of painting contractors. And so any questions that you may have, hey, Greg, why don't you mute yourself while I'm chatting, just because I'm getting a little.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just remember to unmute yourself when it's time to talk. But the nice thing about how we put this course together is, Greg and his estimator went through everything for about an hour and 15 minutes for each module, and then had a Q&A. So you can count on that. Whatever questions you had probably got asked by other people as well. One other thing I'll note is, along with this full training that's already here, so you can use it with, for yourself to train you as the business owner. You can also use this to train your estimators. So you have, lifetime access to all this training material that you can review as many times you want, anytime you want, on a phone, on a computer, whatever. But then Greg also does a live webinar every month. So it's, I think, the second Wednesday of the month. It's an hour and a half is what we have carved out. And he shows up and and answers questions and helps people out. So we've kind of got that extra support baked in. And then you also can join our Facebook group for other questions you may have. But we're going to focus right now on what's actually included in each of these modules. So Greg, this is where I'm going to mostly shut up and let you kind of explain what are the big things we cover in each of these, so people can understand what they would learn and what, not just what they will learn, but I think a lot of people are like, I don't even know what I need to know. And there's a lot of things in here that I know if you don't know could come back and really bite you in the ass. So
absolutely. So basically we broke it down into 8 modules. So in the beginning, that first little picture you see there where it's showing different types of buildings, there's different types of commercial work, there's different niches, and we cover the basics on there. So you have hospitality, industrial, residential, and there could be retail. There's quite a few sectors. So it's really important to decide what type of work suits your business best. And if you're transitioning from residential into commercial, this is where you might want to pay attention in the beginning phase of the course, because we talk about transitioning and making it easy on your company to do so. And then in the next one here, the next module, we talk about bid invites and what type of information to look for. Not only that, but also how to put yourself out there for soliciting this work as well. So this is really a turnkey setup for you. It has all the information to get started on commercial estimating, where to go, how to do it, what websites to visit. Of course, we're not affiliated with any of the recommendations we make. We just give our own true opinion of those. So we cover quite a few of them in the course.
All right, great. So we've got kind of, so essentially this first module is a lot of the very high level introductory overview. Is that fair to say? So we've kind of got the different segments and where you want to focus. So you kind of know where you're at. And then we've got the very general start with like, hey, you got a bid invite from someone. Let's understand how to read that. All right. So then module 2, take it away.
Yeah. So the second module, we're talking about terminology, things to look out for as you're reading through the documentation that comes across to you. So basically, in a nutshell, these are large file transfers, and they usually come in PDF format. And there's things called specifications, which some of you may already know about that. Some of you may not. Specifications are the directions on how you're going to paint this project. It tells you what type of substrates, if it's drywall, metal, whatever that is. So this is kind of what we cover in this course. It's the terminology that's important in the drawings and the specifications.
Awesome. How big, just out of curiosity, how big is that PDF typically? Like how many pages so people can understand the, I don't know, detail?
Yeah, so it's relative. It's relative to the size of the job. You'll find as you gain more experience in this sector, there are some people that are way more organized than others. So sometimes there are no specifications, which allows you a lot of autonomy to kind of create your own environment and make your own recommendations. The biggest thing is just documenting it, which we cover over in the estimation process.
Okay.
So we also talk about, and you'll see here, that actually is a snippet of a commercial liability policy. We talk about what's kind of required to get started in the different types of sectors, like umbrella policies and different insurances that you need to consider. Because I know a lot of residential guys, and I come from that market as well. You may not have umbrellas to cover large claims and things of that nature because you're working in houses, and the chances of you having multiple incidents at one time are kind of slim. So your insurance costs go up. So it's a consideration when you start bidding, and we talk about that as well.
Got it. And this is, of course, just one slide of many. This is, of course, one slide of many in this part of the presentation. Then we've got commercial drawing types.
Right.
And you elaborate on here?
Yeah. Okay. So basically, when you get into architectural drawings, they're broken out into the different segments of the job. So you have architectural drawings, which is where our stuff is going to be. There's civil, which is like site planning and like flow of traffic and things of that nature, landscaping. There's mechanical drawings. There's electrical drawings. And we just break down the different types that there are in this part of the course.
Awesome. All right. So now we're getting a little more detailed here. So we're into module 3. Project manual overview. So we've got in this third module, that's the primary training here. So what does this entail?
Okay, so this is kind of where we do a deep dive into like reviewing a project and what we're going to what the terminology that we've learned in the beginning, where we're going to find all that stuff, and how we identify what the scope of work is when we begin the bidding process. So for us, when we talk about this, we usually look at the specifications first. First of all, to make sure that we're capable of carrying out the work that they're asking us to do, because sometimes there's some foreign paint or something that you may not have experience with and you may need a certification for. So we like to make sure that we review any document that they send over to us. So we talk a lot about in great detail on how to identify that, how to save time in that process as well, which is huge when it comes to estimating.
Awesome. So and I think it's really important here just to mention you got to be 100% responsible for building the scope of work and knowing what questions to ask for clarification, requests for information, because there could be things that are missed but expected, or there could be things in there where you're like, hey, I don't even want to put all the time into bidding this, which it does take a lot of time. So really important note just in commercial in general is that homework you're doing ahead of time before you pursue a project is super important, and the importance of putting together the whole scope of work and making sure you're accountable for that, not relying on other people, because that can burn you.
It's a great screenshot. It looks like I'm yelling at the camera there.
Where it was down in this one right here.
So like, listen, this Gatorade bottle is been thrown at you if you don't pay attention in this class. So then once we find the project that we're interested in, then we jump into this module here where we're talking about uploading the plans into our particular estimating software that we use, which is a digital blueprint reading software. And basically we cover from start to finish how to set up your files, how to organize them. We talk about scaling plans, how to highlight them, how to identify the scope of work that's hidden inside of plans. This is a lot of the course here.
Guys, this one module is worth all of it just from how much time it's going to save you from learning this from someone really familiar.
It really will. And I'm just going to, say this real quick. Like anybody that's considering doing this, this is like a discipline and repetition type of end of the industry. And if you follow this system, and when you're starting out, or let's just say you're hiring an estimator, this is kind of the mindset that we had. Like, all right, you're a business owner, you want to understand the process, at least to have a conversation with your estimator and be able to develop your business, but maybe you don't want to do it yourself. Like this program is designed for that environment as well. And Eric is totally right. This is going to save you a ton of time. And
just learning.
Yeah. I mean, just like I said, when I was learning, I mean, I was there with a ruler, and I'm sure you guys have seen an architect square, like in my boss's office, measuring, each little nuance of the room, and we have really sped this process along a lot.
All right, so we got module 4, uploading plans, scaling plans, highlighting plans. This is how you're going to get the plans. Now that you've determined, okay, I understand the niche I'm in, I understand how to read the invite, I understand how to find all the project specs, I understand how to review the project and scope of work, I want to bid it. Now we're putting it into the into the planning software, scaling it to size, highlighting the plans, so now we can actually start bidding. And then you want to, I have no idea what this part is. So what?
Yeah. Which is a question that commonly comes up, like, oh, well, what software do you use and what do you recommend? There are a lot of options out there at this point. When we first started, there were kind of a couple of competitors, and like Plan Swift, and we use On Center. On Screen Takeoff is the name of the product. They all do the same thing at the end of the day, so it's really a preference. So what we did was we had a guest speaker come in and do some training on Stack, which is a cloud-based program. And honestly, at this point for us, even personally, this is a really good program. It's not robust. It's very simple. But if you're training somebody and you're just getting started, this is actually a really good avenue to pursue.
And so the point is, this is an introduction to some software that you could use. Is that correct?
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
And then this part, setting up conditions and beginning takeoff. Just in short, what is this?
Okay, so we call it conditions. I mean, you think about it as from the perspective of how you paint a room, right? You go in, you paint your ceilings, you paint your trim, prep involved, assume there, right? And then you paint your walls. So we're breaking out our estimate in the same fashion. Now, when we talk about measuring stuff in here, we actually break it down. So I'll give you an example. Crown molding, that would be a linear foot production rate. Ceilings are going to be square footage.
Got it.
Windows, you can do trim, like anything like that. So we break it out, and it's not all just based on the square footage of the whole building, which you'll see a lot of advice, and that is absolutely not the way to go.
Yep. All right. So this is, in short, we're starting to actually do the takeoff and the pricing based on production rates. And yeah, quick little rant, Greg, which you can back me up on this, given your expertise in this domain. Absolutely crazy how that is the standard in the industry, is advice is bidding per square foot.
Yeah.
Look, you could have a 2,000 square foot room or 2,000 square foot of walls, because people talk about it in both ways also, when they're talking per square foot. Sometimes they're talking floor plan, sometimes they're talking walls. It's crazy how inconsistent that is. But the level of detail could be the difference between a $5,000 bid and a $20,000 bid. It's absolutely nuts. So anyways, we
yeah, I know. I just felt like I had to get that in there because
you did.
That's one of those things that it irks me, and that is exactly why this is going on right now today.
Unbelievable, dude. All right, so now we've got scope writing and takeoff. What is that referring to?
Okay, so this goes hand in hand with the conditions as we start to, and we have a particular system in the way that we do it. Our estimates are Excel files. We copy and paste what the scope of work is as we go. So typical setup for an estimator, what we like to see is 3 screens. You got one with your scope, one with the drawings, and then one with your takeoff. So you can reference a ceiling plan and an actual floor plan at the same time, know your ceiling heights, and you're effective. The whole thing is speed here. Speed and precision is what you want to develop when you're estimating, because especially when you're beginning, and this is what I'm assuming everybody in here is doing, or you may be polishing your skills, the more you get out there, the more possibilities of opportunity that you have. And what we did, and the reason we have zero marketing spend, is because you could shift that needle anywhere. Like the money's gonna be spent. Business will cease to exist if you don't do anything about it. So our methodology is more like a numbers game. Like you throw enough stuff at the wall, something's gonna stick, right? And in the beginning, you have to be really proficient at it.
And about the precision, for anyone who's new to, bidding prints and working with GCs, it's very, maybe your background is in repaints. Repaints, there's a ton of fluctuation in price that you can get away with. That will not work when you're working with GCs. Yeah. This is very detailed. Like a GC knows the price needs to be in this range to be considered. They know that range. They know what this needs to be. So you really do need to be precise for both winning bids, but also for, precision is critical.
And it's also kind of flipping the script too, because, normally in a residential environment, you have the opportunity to pitch, right? And you have an opportunity to sell your company.
Yeah.
Not saying that doesn't exist here, but it's not the same medium. The way that you sell your company is in providing reliable bids and being consistent in that. The pitch part comes at the end when they say, okay, so-and-so, you get this job. And you're like, great, and they have questions for you, and they want to do an interview, and they want to vouch that you're capable of doing the work. That's where your pitch and the sales comes. So this is really a numbers game from my perspective, and I think that
it is.
A good job.
It is, right. It's a numbers game early on until you've got some reliable relationships with some GCs that it's your win rate goes up, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and and we talk about this as well throughout the course of not only obtaining the bid invites, but also how do you start to develop the relationships with the people that you want to work with, right. And then how do you nurture those along the way so you get to the point where you don't have to spend the money on marketing and give it to other people and give it back to your employees.
All right. So then we had module 7 was just continuing the takeoff. Module 8 finishing the takeoff, and it's just there's a lot there. If you look at this whole training, there's probably about 10 hours of training. And it's going to be complete. So that's, let me stop sharing my screen here quick. Okay. So a couple other things I wanted to touch on here. If I can pull it up. All right. So some kind of an overview here is, so guys, it's going to be top to bottom for how are you going to bid from blueprints, making sure that you're getting an accurate price, an accurate scope, and setting yourself up to win and be profitable on jobs where you need to bid from prints. Now, some of the common questions I know we get from people, Greg. So we're going to move into kind of power answers, quick speed here, but pricing for different parts of the country. How do you address that?
So we cover this pretty well in the course. Also, that we give a baseline of numbers and a good starting point. Now, we also talk about how you start to determine that, right? And if you're using residential production numbers, they don't really carry over unless you're doing commercial repaints. So this is mainly focused on new construction or what we call tenant upfit or remodel.
And if we're talking about repaints, you're not bidding from prints normally anyway.
Exactly. You do that traditionally,
and we cover that in the repaint course with Scott for the record. That's going to be all covered in repaint.
Yeah.
But
basically, the other thing I would say to that is you have to test the market, and this is where building relationships with your sales representatives from your manufacturers comes into play because they know what the numbers are. Right. And the closer you get with them, the better relationship you build. You have to get your prices. They will help you to determine what the going rate is in your area.
And fundamentally, guys, we're bidding this on production rates. The amount of time it takes to paint this substrate doesn't change in different parts of the country. What changes is the labor rates.
Right.
It's going to give you a starting point depending on where you are in the country. Because he's trained so many people, he's like, oh, that's where you are. This will be a good place to start. And then he does cover in the course how you're going to adjust that over time using your vendors. Next question, and we'll go into more detail about this in part 2. But why should you use a freelancer, like a third party, to just do your bid for you? Why would you use that, and why wouldn't you use that?
Well, I mean, I guess it's relative to your time that you have available. So using a freelancer would be an opportunity if you're someone who's wearing a lot of hats in your company and you're trying to grow, and you obviously need to pass off some responsibility to other people. So it's not the best methodology, and I don't know how in detail you want to get into that.
Well, I'll just answer it to some degree is, look, how do you know they're doing a good job if you don't have the education on this?
Yeah.
You know, one of the guys that went through your course, Greg, Jerry Remington, I don't know if you remember him. I got an email from him and he's like raving about what he learned because he's like, I double checked my estimator's work and I was about to do a job that I was going to lose my ass on. I bid it right and won it. And it was like a $20,000 swing for him. So it's kind of like you got to be careful just handing this off, because I've had a lot of people say, hey, I need someone to bid this commercial blueprint. I'm like, if you don't even know what you're doing there, you probably shouldn't be doing that work. Like it's a matter of time, statistics, and odds that you are going to get your ass handed to you if you don't know what you're doing. And that's why I put this whole course in the first place is like when you make a mistake on a residential project, it might cost you a couple $100. You're dealing with way bigger numbers here. Way more's at stake. A little mistake can be $10,000. Like, you're crazy to go after commercial work if you don't know what you're doing. It just guarantees that over time you're going to make a huge mistake that's going to be really costly. So that was
this touches on what I was talking about earlier about like elevating the industry as a whole. So I made a lot of mistakes myself, and like I said, I went in head first, thinking that I could figure it out, and quickly learned that I needed some training and hire mentors, and went through a process where I did hire people to work for me, and they made a lot of mistakes.
Yep.
And thankfully, we were able to pick up on that because of our process that we developed. So you have to be very careful with it. And I think the other thing too is that there's a lot of excitement, when you're growing your company and you get like all of a sudden have this opportunity to get this $100,000 job, and you're like, well, that would be, I want to hit $1 million and I only need, that much more. Forget that.
Oh,
it's crazy. It's fairy dust. It's not the thing to chase. You have to start small and work your way up. I will tell you right now from a personal, experience that the $500,000 job is a lot more to manage. It's a lot more to manage. You're better off doing $10,000, $50,000 jobs.
Well, until you know what you're doing, and like,
Yes,
right.
exactly.
But no, the thing about chasing things when you're not educated is crazy. I've said that so many times. In the last 4 weeks, I don't know what's going on, Greg, but I have had so many people emailing me in the last 3 to 4 weeks with, Eric, I've got this huge commercial opportunity. Do you have any advice? And I'm like, yeah, educate yourself. Don't, I say don't do it, which is painful to me because if you had the knowledge, that could maybe be $100,000 profit on that job.
Absolutely.
But if you don't have the knowledge, you cannot do it. And so my advice to people is you're a month late. You needed to educate yourself a month ago to be ready to get this bid in a week from now. And if you're not already educated, there's not enough time to educate yourself to do it the right way in a week.
You can't cram this information in.
Yeah,
you cannot do it in one sitting. It's a lot to take in, and you have to practice because you will make mistakes in the beginning. And that's why I'm saying you're better off chasing the smaller jobs in the beginning because like the guy that attended Jeremy said, his estimator missed something. Well, he took the course and learned from that and saved himself $20,000 or made himself $20,000
on a job,
on one job.
All right. So, and we could do a whole hour session where we're like, hey, Greg, let's just talk about all the mistakes you've made and other people make and what they cost you.
Let me refill my coffee.
You could buy a house. You could buy a house with the mistakes you've made, I'm sure. So let's wrap it up though. So for anybody watching this video, here's the summary. If you're interested in learning how to bid blueprints, which really if you want to go and pursue jobs with general contractors, you're going to need to bid from blueprints. If you're going to be doing bids from blueprints, you don't need to do them all yourself, but we would really recommend that you educate yourself on it, even if you're going to delegate it, because we're talking about a lot of money. It's about 10 hours, 12 hours of training to go through this course to educate yourself so you know what you're doing, so you can cross-check people's work, make sure the big things aren't missed, and on. So how this program works is you get the online modules we just showed you. You'll join our Facebook group, which is a private group where you can ask questions day to day. And then Greg does a live webinar for our members once a month. All right. So that's the package. It's $2,000 and it's going to be on the site. So if you're watching this on the website, there's a button below the video that says sign up. You click that, you fill out an order form. You'll know how to do that. And then there's a little blue link below that says contact us with questions. You can click that button and fill out the form, and either me or I'll call you, or I'll pass it along to Greg and he'll give you a call if you got a couple questions about the course before jumping in. All right, so that wraps that up. So what we're going to do now is just transition into some just general discussion about working with GCs that's not specific to bidding and estimating. So this will be more like interview style, Greg, and just so we can cram a lot more in, we'll try and go quick. So the first question I have is why. I think it's a personal preference for everybody, but for you, you said you started ramping up your business with residential repaints, $650K by your third year. I'm guessing you were doing all the bids and project management yourself at that point. So it's very busy. That's a lot to be managing yourself. And so that was what prompted you to go to commercial. So what do you like about commercial painting more than residential painting?
So it's kind of interesting nuance, right? But for me personally, I'm kind of ambitious with other goals as well. So what this does is it frees up a lot of my personal time to be able to do things like this, and not have to be on the phone with residential clients for, I can't even tell you how many times a day. You all know, if you're doing this, don't have to tell you about it. But you're dealing with a lot of different moving parts. If you're just painting a kitchen in someone's house and you send a 2-man crew, where do they go next? What's the color here? What's the trim color? Where's the paint? Whereas a commercial job, I'm like, these are my orders. I send it into the store. They drop ship it to the job site. My guys have a scope of work, and I don't hear from them until there's a problem, if there is one.
And typically you're on jobs longer as well.
Yeah,
right?
for months. Yeah, they're there for months. Like some of them, will be on for years. and we're just basically following them as they put up a wall, we paint it. They put up a pipe, we paint it. And they go on to the next sector of the building and they do more work. So it allows a lot more fluidity too between working on different jobs, right? So if you're working in the middle of a residential job and you have somebody's house torn up, the furniture's moved to the center, you got your plastic going, and you're like, you know what, Mrs. Jones, sorry, I won't be there tomorrow. I have something else that came up. Like, your phone's going to be ringing. And
in trouble,
yeah. So it kind of eliminated that nuance of the business. And I don't have any problem with residential. I made a lot of money doing it too. But for me personally, that's what works best.
Yeah. Well, just to be clear for everybody, I think the position is residential repaints is a great business. It's a cash business that gets you a lot of capital and a lot of momentum going. And there's a lot of benefits to getting into the commercial world, whether you're doing repaints or you're doing GC type work.
There is a part two to that also.
Great.
You started thinking about my employees, and when you're running residential, it's turn and burn, right? I mean, most people run their schedule close 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe you're further out now because of COVID and employee shortages and such. But I mean, for the longest time, and your guys are looking at that job list and they're like, Jones, Miller, Barstow, there's nothing else on the board. And they start panicking and they're thinking like, what, should I look for a job? Do we have work coming up? What's going on? When I put a job on the board here, they get stressed and they're like, oh God, we're going to be there for a year, and but it's like, it's good stress. It's employment stress. It's like, you're happy to have your job. And it created, like a much less anxiety ridden workplace for us.
Yeah.
It's a peace of mind.
Yeah. I'm with you. I think there's a ton of benefits to both, but I'd say the residential is a very fast business and it's a marketing and sales game.
Right.
Commercial is slow and it's more of a relationship and professionalism game.
Yep.
And there's something really nice about that. It's a grind.
Yeah, there's people that do both at the same time and they make a success at it. And there's anybody in here that could do that if they want to. It totally works.
Well, and I've got that's a whole other video and training and something we go to in the Painting Business Pro training is what's the process by which you should build your company and add multiple streams. Because if you're just trying to do all of them at once from the get-go, it's going to not work.
Yes.
But I do think there's a benefit to having these different channels of business, but you need to add them in the right way. All right. So I guess we'll answer a couple of questions that people post in the group. So one was someone said, what's the profit margin with GCs? And then I'll go into the next ones.
Okay. Yeah, I saw that one. That's an interesting question. I think generally you're talking about production. So profit margins are going to be lower on the larger projects, which it's kind of counterintuitive when you think about it. There are a lot of opportunities where you will do a lot better. So what is baseline for your program in the residential? What is it, 50?
Yeah. So in residential repaints, we're aiming for 50% gross profit. So after labor and materials, you're left with 50% of the job to run the business and earn your profit.
Okay. So we're operating, anywhere from the 35 and north of that.
That's 35 gross profit.
35 gross profit is our baseline. That's our baseline. And where that starts to get interesting is where you start to develop your operation side of your business better, right? The way that you carry out a job, what type of things that you're willing to put up with in environments. And you can turn those dials and make that more and more as you go. The other thing is staying within a sector that makes sense for you. If you guys don't, if you don't paint industrial warehouses, and your guys don't like doing it, don't go after it. It's counterintuitive. Your profit margin is going to sink in that environment. So it's hard to answer that question because there's so many factors that play into that.
Yeah. So for you though, in your business, you guys are doing GC work, aiming for 35% or more gross profit.
Exactly.
And I know that it's a hard question to answer because there's not an answer, right? This is what we do and this is what we teach.
Exactly.
And what we do, and by we I mean Painting Business Pro, me and Greg, what he's teaching in this course is 35 is we're going to aim for 35%. Now, part of that has to also do with, what segments are you in and are you good at it or not?
Yep.
Something has to do with the GCs you choose to work with or don't choose to work with,
Right.
the red flags you look out for. So you don't, because there are GCs out there that are going to beat you up badly and you can't possibly make 35%. So it's that being selective with your projects and who you work for as well, I imagine.
Yep.
Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, no, totally. It is absolutely is. I hope that answered the question, well enough for who asked it.
I think the takeaway there is there is no set amount, and I think that your numbers there, Greg, are probably higher than industry average. I'm certain of it, actually. That 35% gross on GC work is higher than industry average.
Yeah.
But I think it's because you know what you're doing. I think if you go talk to most freelance estimators, they're going to say we're going to bid this for 15 to 25% gross, because I've talked to them, and that's what they say.
Yeah.
So I think, guys, and if you go talk to a lot of painting contractors who are in repaints, they're not saying 50% gross. They're paying 60, 65. I even have students I say do 50 and they do 60, 65. So, I mean, expenses like 60, 65 expenses, meaning 35 gross. So, okay. So we just had a question come in. Priceless wisdom. My newly created aligned life calendar. Beautiful. Has a goal to start going through all the commercial course starting October 1st, hoping to prepare for dipping my toes into commercial next year, my second year in business. What would be a good type of starter project to make as a goal next year? Let's not get into that one right now, because I think it'll be off topic a little bit from the purpose of this video. I'll answer that question in our Facebook group, though. All right, Greg, I got a couple other questions that are on topic, though. One is, how do you protect yourself, making sure you get paid on time without having to fight for your money?
So that's another interesting question. So you actually are protected. You just need to know how to operate through the paperwork. So I think you cover that in Scott's end of the course. Is that right? The business side. Do you cover the billing at all, or?
To some degree, but we're focusing mostly on repaints, where you're see in this situation, you're signing the GC's contract typically.
Right.
And in repaints, they're signing ours. And so we do talk about payment negotiation, but that's a very different payment process in repaints than GC work.
Yeah. So when you do payment applications for GC work, it's through the AIA. And if you haven't seen any of those, it's this Architects Institute, or I forget the acronym for it. But basically, it's a government sponsored form that you have to submit in order for you to invoice for your project. So you can bill for deposit. They have different verbiage, right? And we cover that in the vocabulary too. So we also do research on our clients to make sure that doing a little due diligence and doing a little search with somebody's name will give you some information, because especially when people get burned out there, they're not afraid to put people on blast on the internet. So I think anybody that owns a business knows how that can go. So I would recommend that's where you start with it. That's really the biggest thing I could say, is do research on your clients.
Awesome.
Before you sign the contract.
Again, it comes back to, you don't just say yes to big price tags and exciting numbers. Saying no is a very important skill to have building your business. What do GCs find valuable, and how do you portray that value to them, since we're not trying to be the lowest price?
No, right. I like to say we aim for the middle. And sometimes we're the highest price, and they tell us that. What they look for is good communication, matching the goal of the as a whole for the project, right? So sometimes they're going to ask you to do things that you are probably out of sequence and you normally wouldn't do, but it will help move the needle in the future. So you have to kind of fall on that sword and make sacrifices. They like that. They like people that aren't causing any conflict with other trades. So one of our initiatives that we focus on is good communication with the drywallers, and not creating that animosity that I'm sure people have heard of that can happen.
Yeah.
So those are two really good things that I would say.
And guys, it comes back to what I said, which is commercial is professionalism in relationships.
Right.
Like, you're dealing with business to business here. Just think about, what do you look for in your subcontractors? Yeah, well, that's someone who like, you don't have to babysit. They do what they say they're going to do. They don't cause headaches. They deliver the job as promised. And I know that you're willing to pay more money for those people.
Yep.
Because
Exactly.
I have people doing it all the time. They're like, I'm paying 60% out instead of 50%, but this guy's just so good. Yeah, well, that's what GCs do too. They'll sacrifice some of their margin for good subs. And you should also know that the painting scope of a whole GC project is pretty small. So overpaying the painter makes very little impact on the overall profitability of a GC project.
It's usually less than 3%.
Yeah.
Total project cost. So, and using that for your negotiation.
Yeah.
You know where you stand with that.
All right. I think what we'll do, Greg, is I could ask questions all day long, but given that we're at our hour, and there's not questions coming in on the chat at the moment, let's wrap up there, and then this video is going to be posted on our different groups. I'm going to put it out on YouTube, and we'll encourage people to ask more questions. And then once we've got enough questions that makes sense to do one of these, we'll do another, or maybe we'll just include them in one of your monthly webinars and cover it that way. So I hope you guys found it valuable. And if you've got questions, just drop it in the comments below this video or contact us or whatever. And we're here to help. Greg's super generous guy and really good at what he does. So he's an awesome resource. And if we can't answer your question, we'll get you in touch with someone who can. Last question, Jonathan said, employees or subs?
Yeah, I mean, that's a personal preference. I feel like I like to have a mixture. I have employees, and leadership is really important when it comes to this side of the business. You have to have people that understand the full scope and the big picture, because it could get overwhelming. So handing it off to subs in our environment is typically a lot of micromanaging on my end. So it's not really beneficial. I'd rather spend the time and train someone. And again, this is why it's a personal preference, because that does take away from your profit at times. But for me, quality of life is really important, and having free time. So I make my money in investments. This is like, I consider this to be my day job and my profession. But like my leaps and bounds into the, goals that I have are more from my smart decisions with the money that I make.
So, Jonathan, the way I would answer that question is the way I always do. They're all people. It doesn't matter. They're people. You need good people.
Yeah.
Period. And in my experience, subcontractors simplifies a lot of things that you cannot simplify with employees.
Yeah.
There's other challenges that are added with employees.
Right.
Now, having said that, we're hiring employees at our company right now because there are some things that are nice about having just an employee who's in-house. So,
and I feel like, and this is one of those questions where both answers are right.
Yeah.
And it's like the scale
it's like what you said, it's a personal preference.
Yeah, it's a balance. You have to balance the equation for what works for you and what's most important to you. What are your goals and what do you want to achieve? Yeah. And start with there, and then I would reverse engineer it from there. Like, do you want to sell your company? I feel like that's a big factor in that.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole other can of worms, because I would.
It is. Yeah, that's what I'm
saying. There's other, but anyways, yeah. So we'll just keep an eye on the comments, guys. Greg, we appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no, thanks everybody for coming. I really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to ask questions and be here. And supporting Painting Business Pro too.
Yeah, and if you guys, if you want to sign up for the course, sign up for the course. If you have questions, reach out to us. And if you have other questions, drop them in the comments or whatever, but get in touch and we're here. So hope this was valuable for everybody, and we'll talk to everybody soon.
Sounds great. Thanks, everyone.